Okay, Wednesday, 4th of February 2026, so Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Follow the Zeitgeist, equality rears its ugly head, and the death penalty. So I did a handful of videos in the past, talking about be at the Zeitgeist, be at the cutting edge, be a one standard deviation away from normal, in a sense of out the mainstream, and at the cutting edge of technology, ideas, concepts, whatever else, to learn new ideas and concepts, because it could be something wiser, smarter, better, and how else and where we're supposed to learn that stuff apart from the edges, the fringes, and two, to get a general sense as to where the world is going, the direction, the zeitgeist, the route, uphill, downhill in civilization, or flat, to be a little poetic. So, two interesting things I see on the horizon. I did a video as well about this 2 or so years ago, how to predict the future. Essentially 15 years, things are a little different. 30 years from now, night and day. And today, what will be considered crazy, because the Overton window will have shifted, 30 years from now could be normal, could be common sense, could be standard. Now, I have a slight interesting suspicion, hunch and feeling in the future, the equality, and this is a bit of a speculative thought, will be mocked, will be seen as naive, will be derided, will be disregarded, will be seen as rearing its ugly head in some fashion. With regards to, there's two people. One person who's done, achieved and created things and built stuff and is worthwhile in terms of society, as in productive member of society by any metric. Another person who has done nothing of the sort. And you mean to tell me that they're equal? You're going to impose equality on two different people who have achieved complete different things in terms of meritocracy, and yet no, they're equal. You're going to impose that, and have a general hunch in the future that will be the general idea. It'll be seen as equality will be scorned at, will be seen as naive, will be seen as not as important as meritocracy, not as important as merit and value and quality of character, things like that, actual quantifiable things that have been built or achieved. Interesting. And other thing is the death penalty, because because the death penalty over the centuries called off people, literally killed them, people who were more inclined to be disruptive, let's say, to a society, to harmony, we could say, to a community, breaking the law by their own societal standards. Their genetics were called off, were stopped, were killed, essentially. And that's building up genetic abnormalities in society, to use a genetic phrase. We're creating what we call, or what the Jolly Heretic calls, spiteful mutants, with regards to people who are, let's say, mental, to be very blunt, who don't appreciate the values of society, or they are too, in terms of personality traits, ocean. They're not agreeable enough. They're too disagreeable enough. They're too impulsive as well, neurotic, we could say, on the N, on ocean, and causing chaos and disruption. And when there's an accumulation of these disruptive genes, let's say, a very scientific way of putting it, in society, that causes chaos. With regards to these people are not unlike they are too different from everyone else. They are too adversarial, let's say, criminals, things like that. Or you could say in the 1600s, England, 1600s, so 400 years ago, witches, okay? Quite literally that kind of genetic structure. Interesting. And, very, very interesting. So you could then say that in the future then, it would be more politically viable to have the death penalty for people who consistently don't follow the law, basically, don't adhere to societal expectations or standards, especially, we could say, when it's a meritocratic or merit-based society and culture, referring back to the previous one concerning equality rearing its ugly head. So that's interesting idea, because I see these things in the Zeitgeist. These are some general things I see in the Zeitgeist, but they're not going to be, in terms of Overton window, talked about in the mainstream or palatable for, you could say, pessimistically 30 years from now. 15 years from now, things will be subtly different, subtle changes here and there, but 30, it'll be night and day. So these kind of things won't be talked about easily for 30 or so years, and many other things as well that today are benign, or today no one cares about, things like that, or today things that are hot topics, but 30 years from now will be benign and indifferent, things like that. So it works both ways. That is just the nature of people and mankind. Things change, ebb and flow. But this is what I see on the Zeitgeist in the distance. A discorning for equality and an embrace of the death penalty, especially in terms of a cohesive society, consistent culture, we could say, people getting along, or even we could say emphatically restoring, we could emphatically say restoring beauty. But that today could be, that phrase right there could be contentious. But like I said earlier, 30 years from now, that could be just mundane, standard, of course, taken for granted. Naturally, of course. So it's fascinating. At a deeper level, it's fascinating how societies change, human nature stays the same, 2 arms, 2 legs, things like that, but desires, plans, ambitions, goals, priorities and values change all the time. So this is some things I see in the distance. Now, we have to wait and see, for the future, but this is fascinating, especially the meritocracy thing with regards to equality being sneered at, reviled, in a sense of these 2 people are completely different. One is a lot better than the other. Why doesn't that person who does more get more privileges, so to speak, get better treatment, societal, economical, cultural, things like that? And of course that's a question for future cultures to kind of wrestle, and it's a question for future historians 100 years from now. So it's a question for future societies 30 years from now to wrestle with, and it's a question for philosophers and historians 100 years from now to debate about. As we all look, as right now we're living through it, as they, through hindsight, look at the way the world has changed and shifted and how things happened over the decades. In the same way we look at the 1800s and think, well, 1810s, 20s, 30s, it's all the same, and what happened there, this and that and that, and this, got no idea. But future historians will say, that was the moment, this was the event, that was the inflection point. In general, on a grand scheme of things. But yes, it's worth understanding. It's worth understanding at a deeper level then, the times we live in, and to be socially calibrated. In a sense of what not to say, how to say it, when to say it, who with, etc, etc, etc. Yeah, very important. But otherwise, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff mentioned now. Subscribe for more, and you will see me tomorrow.